Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I want to show you guys pretty much everything that you need to know in order to record or stream videos from within OBS, Open Broadcaster software. So this should more or less be a complete guide for beginners getting started. So when you first open OBS, you'll notice a preview window in the center. Whatever is being fed into this window is what your viewers are going to see, whether you're recording to a file or streaming live to a site like Twitch TV or YouTube. So everything that's contained within this preview window is stored inside a scene. So when you have different setups, perhaps one for each game, or maybe you have one for screencasting, one for doing a webcam vlog style video, then those all get put into their own new scene. And inside of the scenes, how you actually make stuff show up is by adding in sources. So generally speaking, these are going to be video sources. They can be images, it can be a screen on your computer, it can be a window from your computer. So like OBS is its own window here, but that could also be a web browser or a game sometimes. And you can also add in game capture, which has a few extra settings, such as being able to capture specifically full screen applications, which are usually going to be games. But inside of a game capture, you can also select a specific game from the list if you want to. Always make sure that a scene is associated with a specific game. So whenever you want to create a scene, you click on the plus button in the bottom left-hand corner, and then you give it a name. So for instance, I could just call this tutorial scene, and then that'll pop up in your list of scenes. So now in order to make anything show up, we're going to have to use some video sources. So for instance, I can right-click here, go to Add, and choose a display capture. So this would be selecting one of my monitors for display inside of OBS. You can give it a name if you want. So I could say this is monitor 1. So as soon as you do that, you'll see one monitor pop up, generally your default monitor 1, but you can select other monitors from the display selection if you have them. Capture cursor is checked by default, so as long as you want to be able to show people where your cursor is moving around the screen, you probably leave that set up there. So another source that we could add in would be an image. So this could be a overlay or it could be a logo you want to display. So for instance, I'll go to right click, add image, and I'll just call this OBS logo here. Hit enter and select an image from my computer. So inside of my pictures logos folder, I have some logos we can bring in here. So I'll use the Open Broadcaster software logo. Note that while I'm hovering over it, you can see that the dimensions of this file are huge. So what's going to happen as soon as we put it in is that it is going to appear larger than our entire video screen. Temporarily, to get rid of this recursively showing the screen effect, I'm actually going to hide monitor 1. So you can do that by clicking on the eyeball next to any source. Another thing to note here is that sources will show from top to bottom. So the OBS logo is currently on top because it's the first one in the list. But if I move that below the monitor, you can see that we can't see the OBS logo anymore because the display capture is covering the entire screen. So I'm going to keep that on top, which is usually what you'll do with images. I'll hide monitor 1 by clicking on the eyeball. If you want to lock any of these sources in place as well, you can click on the lock signs. So when you have the lock enabled, you won't be able to accidentally move that source if later you are trying to adjust the position of things. So when you have a source inside of your list here, you can left click on the screen where that source is located to select it. So having other sources locked is going to be handy here because you won't be able to accidentally select them. And now with the image, you'll see these corner markers on each of the 4 corners, and they'll also have some in the middle. So you use these points in order to adjust your image. So for instance, if I left click here and I pull this inwards, you'll see that the image is shrinking as we take the original size of the image and we resize it for our video. So I'm going to keep dragging this until we get it to a size that's actually compatible with the screen. So although it was originally from a huge source file, we can resize it so that it's much more modest on the screen. I'll just leave it centered right there for now. So one more thing that you can do with these resizer markers is you can hold Alt down and you can pull in the sides if you want to crop part of the top left, bottom, or right away. So holding Alt down and left clicking, you can see that I can turn this line green and pull it inwards in order to hide part of the image that we may not want to see. So this is more useful if you actually have a webcam added on, a video capture device. You guys how to set that up in a little while. But yeah, for now, just note, holding Alt down and left clicking on a side, you can pull it in and crop away anything you don't want to show. And obviously to move your source around the screen, you left click and you hold and drag it to where you want it to go. So next, let's talk about configuring some basic settings. Go up to the File menu and choose Settings. One thing that you're definitely going to want to check on is your video tab here. So in video, you'll see a base canvas resolution and an output scaled resolution. So the base canvas resolution is usually going to be set to the same resolution that your monitor is set to, and generally, if you're like me, you'll also play your games full screen at the maximum resolution of your monitor as well. So what this base canvas resolution value really means is that whenever you have your preview window showing here, how many pixels are you looking at in the original resolution? So in this case, it would be 1920 across by 1080 high. Now what you can do, but I usually prefer not to, is to have output scaled resolution if you want to downsize the video resolution to a lower value. So in some cases, when you come in here by default, you'll see that the output scaled resolution actually has a lower value, such as 12,080 pixels by 720 pixels. Now what this would mean is that it would take your original 1920 pixels by 1080 and downsize it to 1280 by 720 when you're outputting it to a file or to the live stream. Now, sometimes that could be okay if you have a slow internet and you need to be broadcasting at a lower resolution because your internet bitrate simply can't support, say, 1080p or higher. Or you could also scale it down if you want smaller file sizes. But if you want to capture the most detail, then you would generally want this set to the original value. So go into the video menu and make sure that that's set to the value you prefer. In my case, I'll almost always have the output resolution equal to the base resolution. So the next thing you'll notice here, if I move the settings out of the way, is that in this mixer section at the bottom of OBS, you see desktop audio, which would be capturing the sounds that you would hear through your speakers on your computer. Basically, whatever audio information is going on, usually capturing game audio or beeps from your computer. If you have music playing, all of that goes into desktop audio. But you'll see that there's no microphone in this audio mixer. Generally, you would want to capture a microphone. So if you want to capture a microphone in your audio, go up to the audio menu here, and you'll see mic auxiliary audio here. This is where you can select a microphone from your computer. You can also click the drop down and set it to default. And what that would mean is that whenever you have a microphone selected as your computer default, then it will automatically select that microphone to be your microphone auxiliary audio device. The same applies to desktop audio. You can actually have your computer output to multiple speakers. For instance, you see here, Realtek High Definition Audio would be referring to my laptop speakers, but USB audio device would be referring to the headset I'm wearing. If you set it to default, then it will capture the same audio that goes to the default output device on your computer. So if you find yourself switching between devices and you always want to capture the default, then you can come in here and set those to default. If you prefer, you can always make sure that the exact microphone you want to use is selected by choosing it from the drop-down menu. So in this case, I'll take the microphone auxiliary device and I'll set it to the USB audio device because I don't want to use the laptop microphone. It's not very good. So USB audio device there. And when you hit apply, you should see your microphone appear in the audio mixer. Because I'm talking into the microphone, you can see that the audio levels are showing for that device, which is exactly what you would expect. What you can also do, if you want to hear back what the audio sounds like, is click on the settings icon and go to Advanced Audio Properties. Here, if you turn on audio monitoring, you'll be able to hear your microphone, whatever information is being sent into the microphone, on your desktop audio device by default. In the settings menu, you can also have it redirect to a specific audio device if you have a more complicated setup. So just to show real quick, I'll take the microphone and I'll turn on audio monitoring. I'll put it on monitor and output, which means that OBS will record the output, but also we'll be able to hear it back while we have this turned on. So you can see now that the audio appears in desktop audio as well as microphone auxiliary audio. And when it's in desktop audio, that would obviously be you hearing it back. One case where actually monitoring your audio is really important is when you're going to start applying filters to your audio device. So if I click close here, and we go to the microphone auxiliary device here and go to the filters menu, you can see here that we can have a list of audio filters. So one that I will usually use would be noise suppression. If you're in an area that has a lot of background noise, then you can add in the noise suppression filter, cranking up the suppression level if you need quieter audio, in order to reduce things like low background hums. Also, if you've installed third-party audio plugins, you can find that in the menu here by going down to VST2X audio plugin. So I can add this in here, and the one I'm going to choose is Reaper filter. I'll show you guys where to find that in a minute here. So VST audio plugin, select from the menu, Reaper for standalone. We can open the plugin interface. And if I change the mode here to subtract, what we'll be able to do is to automatically build a noise profile of what audio information should be removed from the background by actually just being quiet for a minute and letting automatically build noise profile go for about 10 or 15 seconds. So I'll do that here, and you'll see that the red line will automatically fit whatever background noise appears. Okay, so at the end of it, it will roughly look like that. You can see as soon as I start talking again, that the audio I'm speaking into the microphone is much louder than the background noise. So it'll try to remove stuff below that point. Now, depending on how much your noise profile actually removes from the background, it can affect the quality of your audio. So that's why when you have these filters enabled, it's a good idea to go back to the microphone auxiliary advanced audio settings and to turn on audio monitoring so you can hear it before you actually start recording. Another audio filter I will often add is the compressor. So the compressor will help take sounds that you speak into your device that are very loud and tone them down a little bit so that it sounds more on the loudness level of your regular speaking. Generally, I don't even find that changing the settings are really necessary here. The base settings work pretty well. So with those three, you can go ahead and hit close. Before we move on from audio filters, though, I want to show you guys where you can pick up the Reaper plugins for free. So that's going to be over at reaper.fm/REA plugs. And when you come in here, you can find the Reaper plugins available in 32 or 64-bit version for free. Now, the Reaper plugins you can use for free. There's also a Reaper software package, which allows you to do more complicated things involving the input and output of your audio. But that's well beyond the scope of this video. So back in OBS, we're going to have some more settings to go ahead and play around with. So one thing we might want to go ahead and try doing now is to set up OBS so that we can actually output it to a video file and to Twitch as well. So let's set it up for recording to a video file and then also connect our account to Twitch. So in File Settings, we can go to the Output tab. Now, by default, this will be in simple mode, which you can see here. That's fine if you're just getting started, but I actually find that the Advanced tab isn't really that much more complicated to understand, so I'll just leave Output mode in Advanced here. Let's go over to the Recording tab first. So on the Recording tab, you'll see here Recording Path. This is the location on your computer where you are trying to output your video files to. So if you hit Browse on your computer, you can select a folder from your computer. It can be anywhere you want it to be. It can be on a network hard drive if you want, as long as you've connected to one. So just pick the folder you want everything to store in. For recording format, I recommend that you set that to MKV. The reason for that is that MKV files support multiple audio tracks at the same time. And if your computer happens to stop the recording randomly, such as a crash, it shouldn't lose all of the video footage. So MP4 also supports multiple audio tracks, but when an MP4 file doesn't complete properly, you may find that the data gets corrupted. So what you can do is record in MKV and then convert that to MP4. And you can see here at the bottom here, the downside of the FLV format is that it doesn't even support multiple audio tracks. That's the default format. So just select here and change it to MKV if you want my setup. You can see here that I have audio tracks 2 and 3 selected for recording. That's one for the microphone and one for the desktop audio device. Streaming is going to be audio track 1. Streaming only supports one audio track, so that's why there's only one there and not 2. For the encoder, I found that I've gotten good results using the new version of NVIDIA NVENC H264, as long as you have a NVIDIA graphics card. It's relatively new. It should be able to support that okay. And then down here, you'll see rate control. So I've been experimenting a little bit with VBR, which is variable bit rate. By default, this is set to CBR, or constant bit rate. So the advantage of constant bit rate, which you can set to a much higher value than 2000 kilobits per second, by the way, as long as your computer is decent. But the advantage of constant bit rate is that your video will always output the same amount of bits per second to the video files. So with variable bitrate, it might have 1 second recording 10,000 kilobits per second, and at another second with much less movement, it'll be 2,000 kilobits per second. But during the time when it jumps from that 2,000 to 10,000 kilobits per second, theoretically, you may find that there are video artifacts and you lose a little bit of detail in the video. So using CBR will eliminate those artifacts from being a problem because it will always record at the same bitrate and you won't have those jumps. But variable bitrate, in theory, would allow you to record at a lower kilobits per second normally. And then when the encoder finds that there's a lot of movement on the screen and it needs to add in a higher bitrate in order to handle that movement, it will jump up the bitrate and have a higher quality for that time. So in other words, it will try to use the amount of bitrate that it thinks is needed for that second but constant bitrate will always have the high quality that you set it up for, but that means a higher video size. So it's up to you what you want to use. Generally speaking, you'll get decent results if your bitrate is set to 5,000 or more. If you have a really nice computer, you can set your bitrate to 10,000 kilobits per second. But if you want to stream at 10,000 kilobits per second, you also need a good internet connection. And that's pretty much it for the settings on the recording tab. So over on the streaming tab, you'll notice audio track 1 is what's set up here by default. That's what I use as my streaming track, leaving the encoder as the same NVIDIA NVENC, the new version. You can use variable bitrate here as well, or you can just do constant bitrate. Works exactly the same way as recording to a file. Do you want more consistency in the video, or do you want it to be space saving where needed? So I'm going to set this up to 8,000 kilobits per second, and that's intentionally a higher value than my internet is actually capable of at the moment. So my internet bandwidth is 35 megabits per second, which generally will allow you to stream at a bitrate somewhere in the 6,000s, which is decent. But if you want to stream at a higher bitrate, you need a more powerful internet connection than that. But we'll be able to see kind of what my max bitrate is when we test streaming later. And then if we'd like, we can lower the bitrate down and the output. If your internet connection doesn't support a higher bitrate, it'll just stream at as fast as it can to Twitch or YouTube. So that should be good for the streaming settings over here. But in order to stream, we'll need to connect it to Twitch or YouTube. We do that on the Stream tab. So with Twitch, you can connect your account directly, which I would say is the preferred way these days, because it uses open authentication. So you connect to your Twitch account, and it also allows you to interact with chat from straight within OBS, and also to set up information about your stream. So you can also use Stream Key here, where if you click on that, it'll give you a link to your Twitch dashboard, and you go there, you find the Stream Key, and then you copy that into this area here. But we'll do the connect account option in this video. So you simply need to click on connect account, and you'll get this authentication pop-up window. Here you just need to put in your username and password. So I'm going to paste that in here. Now in my case, I have two-factor authentication set up as well. So I'll need to go onto my phone and use the Authy app in order to get the token code here. So let's just go ahead and put that in there. And you can also check Remember This Computer for 30 days so that you don't need to really put in the two-factor authentication anymore. Though I don't think you would need to anyway, because as long as you leave the Twitch account connected in OBS, it won't automatically go ahead and disconnect the account, as far as I know. So when you do that, you should see disconnect account put up here. And there is also a bandwidth test mode. So if you enable bandwidth test mode, what you'll be able to do is to check your internet speed, basically, without actually live streaming to Twitch. So it'll send the data to Twitch. You can see if your internet is capable of the bitrate settings, for instance, without actually going live onto Twitch. So we hit apply here, and you can see here the chat windows popping up. The stream information window is also popping up here because I have the Twitch account connected. If for some reason you don't see these windows or you want to hide them, go to View and do Docs, and you can hide and enable chat and stream information here. Okay, so you can see in these windows pretty much the same stuff you would see on the Twitch dashboard if you go onto the website version. So you can set the title of your stream, a go live notification for your followers and your subscribers, what category your game is in. So for instance, if you're playing Hearthstone, you can set that up there. You can give your stream some useful tags. So for instance, like ranked play or arena play would be pretty common tags for that kind of game. You can also choose the language for your stream, so that should obviously be the language you're going to be broadcasting it. And you can update your information by hitting the button there at the bottom. So if you are live and you have any people following you in the Twitch chat, then you'll be able to see the messages here without even having your browser open. And you can see that these windows are detachable. So if you have other monitors, you can put all of these windows onto one screen and then play on the other. Alternatively, you can take these windows and you can have them basically go into one section of OBS. So you can drop them into the top, down at the bottom. Pretty much wherever you want to put your windows, you can have them dock. So I can put this over here to the right, and then the stream information on the left is pretty much the default way of doing things there. So since we're in bandwidth test mode, we can hit start streaming and see our internet connection, making sure that it is connecting to Twitch well. So I'm going to hit start streaming. If you're in bandwidth test mode, you'll get this pop-up which will say that it won't actually go live. So you'll need to disable it before you can really go live for real. So let's hit yes to continue. So now OBS is sending information to Twitch. You should see some information pop up in the bottom right, especially the kilobits per second output bit rate for your stream. You can see here I'm getting about 6,200 kilobits per second. So if you wanted, you could go and update in the settings menu for streaming and just set that to 6,200 because that's pretty much what you'd be capable of with my internet. And you can see the FPS that you're streaming at. You probably want that to be consistent as well. Note that when you are recording with OBS, it's putting a huge burden on your computer in addition to playing the game. So if you are going to be streaming something like Fortnite in ultra settings and recording with OBS, streaming that live, you are going to need a pretty good computer for that. And you also see dropped frames here as a pretty important metric. If you are dropping frames when you're streaming to Twitch, that means that people are going to see a lot of jitteriness when they're actually viewing your stream. Like if 5 frames get dropped, then that means a sixth of a second just disappears from what people are actually seeing. That would be pretty bad. So you want dropped frames to be 0 or as close to 0 as possible. Otherwise, you may have some troubleshooting to do. But if everything else looks good, like your CPU is not too overcharged, and another way you can actually check and make sure that your system's not being overburdened would be to right-click on your taskbar and go up to Task Manager. So if we go over to the Performance tab here, you can see how your system is being used, the percent of the CPU that's being used, memory is being used, and if you scroll down, you can also see GPU as well. Hopefully, it won't be capping out at 100%. That would be when you'd get slowdown, especially for things like memory. So just keep those things in mind when you're recording, or you may need to turn down your settings a little bit, lower the bit rate, or lower the resolution that you're trying to record and stream at. So let's stop this test streaming, and let me show you guys a couple more advanced settings. So in File Settings, some settings I like to have checked: automatically record when streaming. So if you want to record to a file every time you go live and you start streaming, without having to hit the Start Recording button as well, in case you forget or something, then you can have automatically record when streaming checked, which is very useful. You can also customize your theme up here at the top. So Mixery Lite is actually a custom theme I installed. You can find it on the OBS forums, but there's 4 or 5 by default: the Dark Default, Acri, Rechny, and System. I think all of them are pretty good except for System, which is this kind of ugly white look. So Dark Default would be what you normally see, but I'm taking a liking to Mixery Lite. You can also have keep recording when stream stops checked. What this will mean is that if your stream suddenly goes offline because maybe your internet has a disconnection, that the recording to a file will keep going no matter what. So if you were playing an offline game and you wanted to make sure that that footage was available on a file on your computer for later recording, and you didn't want to lose that footage just because the stream went offline, then keeping this enabled is a good idea. So you can just choose that and hit apply. Over on the Advanced tab, there's also automatically remux to MP4. So if you are recording in MKV like I suggested, but you want it to be automatically converted to MP4 so it has more compatibility with video editors, then you can have it check automatically remux to MP4 here. So what that'll mean is that whenever the MKV file finishes recording, it'll automatically convert a copy of it into MP4 format. So if you're using something like DaVinci Resolve to edit your videos, it supports MP4 format but doesn't support MKV, so you'll have that MP4 file automatically. Also, stream delay for people who are serious or kind of playing professionally. You may want to enable stream delay if you are streaming live. That'll help prevent stream sniping by a little bit because everybody will be seeing what you performed 20 seconds ago rather than what is live actually occurring in the game. Completely optional though. So let's hit OK here, and one thing I want to point out is remux recordings. So if you want to convert any OBS recording into a new file, as long as that OBS recording is in a format that OBS supports, you can drag it in here or find it on your computer with this button, and then convert it into a new format. So you can manually turn MKV files into MP4 or FLV or something like that. But generally, I'll just leave that advanced setting checked so I don't have to do that manually. So once again, if you wanted to automatically do it, Advanced tab, automatically remux to MP4. So one more thing, over on the Hotkeys tab, if you want to be able to tell OBS to start recording or start streaming or stop without actually needing to open up the OBS window, then setting hotkeys in here can be pretty useful. So for me, I use Control-R for starting recording and stopping recording at the same time. It's a hotkey combination that you probably won't press on accident. Doing this as long as OBS is open, even if it's just in the notification area and you don't have the window popped up, you can start your recording and stop it just by hitting those keys, which is pretty handy, I find. You can also set that up for streaming. You can use a different hotkey if you want. You could also technically use the same hotkey as long as you're okay and want it to start recording and start streaming at the same time. But yeah, come in here and see if there's any hotkeys you want to set. Generally, I just have this one set. I keep things pretty simple for start recording and stopping recording. So we're getting pretty far along in OBS's basics. So I want to demonstrate one flaw in using laptops for recording in OBS, and that's that there is two graphics cards in a typical gaming laptop. You would have the integrated graphics card, and then you also have the gaming NVIDIA graphics card. So on my computer, which is a Asus TUF Gaming series, the monitor will actually output by default to the integrated graphics card, and there's no real way to change that to be over on the NVIDIA card. It's kind of a physical hardware wiring thing. So if I open up a game here, like Hearthstone, you can see if I re-enable the monitor source that the desktop is able to record just fine. That's because over on the NVIDIA control panel, I have OBS set up to use the integrated graphics card. But because OBS is using the integrated graphics card, it can't actually see the video footage from the games. So on laptops like this, unfortunately, you either have to use display capture or the game capture, and you would need to change OBS's graphics card that it's using for the program manually in order to see the other programs that are running on that graphics card. So the games are going to run on the NVIDIA card, so if you want to record games, then you set it up to use the NVIDIA card. And if you want to record the desktop, which is using the integrated card, then you set it up to use the integrated card. So let me demonstrate this. So clearly I have Hearthstone open on my computer, right? And we can add that in as a game capture source. So I'm going to hide the monitor source here. I'm going to right click, go to add, and choose game capture. So let's call this Hearthstone capture here, hit enter. And we can have it either capture any full screen application, which if I alt tab into Hearthstone would normally automatically grab that. But just to demonstrate that it definitely isn't going to be able to see it, we'll go to capture specific window and choose Hearthstone from the list. So I'll hit OK here, and I'll alt tab into Hearthstone, I'll alt tab back, and you get nothing, right? But we can see that it's capturing the desktop just fine. So let's do a little bit of troubleshooting for that. I'm going to exit OBS temporarily. On my taskbar, I'm going to click the hidden icons. We're going to go and find NVIDIA settings here. Right click, NVIDIA control panel. We can see here manage 3D settings. So you want to go over from global settings to program settings. Find OBS on your list. You may need to add it by finding the program on your computer. And select the preferred graphics processor for this program over from whatever it is to the graphics card you want to use. So by default, it would be the high performance NVIDIA processor. And in this case, I want to go back to recording games as well. So high performance NVIDIA processor, and then you simply hit apply. Now we can open OBS back up on our computer. And now you can see that OBS has picked up on the Hearthstone game perfectly, and we can see that in the preview window. So we're almost done with our setup of OBS. A couple things that we should cover still. Outputting our audio channels to the audio tracks that we want them to record on. So you can remember that we have audio track 1 being the streaming track, and then audio track 2 and 3 are the record to a file audio tracks. We also need to uncheck the bandwidth test mode. And then we should set up a webcam just as kind of a final thing. So in file settings, let's go to stream and turn off enable bandwidth test mode. We're done with that. And now we want to direct our audio devices to the specific audio tracks. So click on the settings icon for any of your audio mixer devices, advanced audio properties, and in here you can see the audio tracks on the right. So if you want the setup I have, then your desktop audio and your microphone should both be outputting to the stream because you want your viewers to actually hear the game audio and your microphone audio, of course. So using my setup, I will have those both checked. Then for microphone, I will have that output to audio track 2. But note, I do not have desktop audio outputting to audio track 2. I want that to be a completely separate track. So desktop audio will have track 3. And I'm also going to disable the microphone for tracks 3 through 6 as well. I only want that outputting to 1 and 2. So 2 is going to be the first audio track from the video file. And then 3, desktop audio, is the second audio track on the video file. So when you pull that into a video editor, you'll notice that there'll be 2 audio tracks that you can edit separately, which is a very useful thing if you care about like taking your footage and I don't know, making a compilation out of it, making the sound better, whatever it is, it's a good idea. So yeah, your setup should look something like that. You can go more complicated if you have more audio devices as well. So let's close that. Okay, so lastly, we can add in a webcam as a video capture source. So if we click on the plus button and go down to video capture device, we can give it a name. So I'll give it the model number of this Logitech webcam, C920. By default, it's popping up to the laptop webcam, which sucks pretty bad. So I'm going to click on the device list and change that to HD Pro's webcam C920. Down in the resolution section, you can select a resolution. First, you have to take device default and change that to custom, and then you can put in your resolution here. So in this case, 1090/20 by 1080. We'll hit OK here, and I'm going to scale it way down because I want it to be in a corner, which is what most streamers would normally do. I'll put it down here, and remember that trick I showed you kind of at the start of this video. And remember that trick I showed you a while ago where you can actually cut away the corners. If you want to do that, just hold Alt and click on one of the edges in the middle, and then drag those away so that you can keep it more focused on you as the streamer recorder. So one more thing I'll point out real quick, if you have a green screen and you want to filter out the background, I clearly don't have that, but if you do and you want to use the chroma key, then right click on your webcam filter, go to Filters, and then in Effect Filters, you can choose Chroma Key here, hit OK, and then select the color you want to filter out. So by default, this will be green, and if you have a green background, you should see that go away immediately. So if you want to select a custom color from your screen, if you think that'll get you better results, click Select Color, pick a screen color, and then you may need to play around with the similarity and the smoothness a little bit until it looks good. Basically, the idea is you filter out the background, but you want to keep yourself in view. The reason you normally use green on a green screen is because people don't really have green hair or green skin, so it's a good color to filter out with chroma key. Putting that aside, I think we've pretty much covered just about all of the basics here. So I guess the last step is going to be to start streaming or recording. So if you want to do your final test and actually start sending video to your live page on Twitch, you can hit the Start Streaming button, which I'm actually going to do here. So when you do that, you're going to want to go to Twitch TV/your username/dashboard/live, and you should see your live video preview pop up here in your video preview in a minute. And once you see that, you know that you're actually live. You should see exactly what you saw in your preview window now showing up in the video preview over there. So I'll stop the streaming for right now because I don't really want to go live. Now note that because I had start recording automatically when you start streaming and stop recording after you stop streaming, checked. So the recording is outputting the video information to a file on your computer. So if I hit stop now, see that that automatically remix recording thing goes right there, changing the MKV file into an MP4 file. And we can find our recorded output in the location where we have it set up to in the settings. So you can see here, the MKV file is right here. And then my MP4 file is right here. If we open that up, we should see about 50 seconds of streaming, be able to hear the audio. And if you set it up like I did, there should be 2 audio tracks, which is good when you bring it into a video editor. So just as the final thing, I'll show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so here we have DaVinci Resolve open. It's my free video editor of choice. And we can add our MP4 file into the program. So I'm going to drop it here into the media pool. Change the project settings to use whatever we set up in our video file. I can expand this a bit. We can see the video file inside of here. And when we drag it onto the timeline, you can see that we have not 1 but 2 audio tracks. So the bottom audio track is the desktop audio. Nothing was really being recorded for that because I muted my audio. And then on the top, you have the microphone audio. So when you have your game audio and your microphone audio, you can edit them individually, which allows you to do a lot more when you're editing. It's hard to edit audio properly if they're both on the same audio track, as you can imagine. So that is pretty much just about everything you need to know to do recording and streaming inside of OBS, at least as a basic beginner's level. So I've been Chris. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys learned a lot. Have fun recording and streaming, and I will see you guys in my future video content.